I was born in Castlemaine down in Victoria, and I started playing when I was about 12. I'm 42 now, and pretty much played in a local band with my cousins for about 10 years, and then when I was about 21 I sent a cassette away to the Spotlight column for guitar player and got in that. And that sort of constituted my resume as such. So I thought, well, I'll send a few tapes out to see if I can score a gig with a professional band. And luckily I sent one to the Wheatley management, and they offered me the opportunity to go and audition for John Farnham. And this was before he'd done Whispering Jack and everything. It was just for a pub tour. And I was just blown out. I've always been a huge fan of John's voice. He's one of the best singers in the world. And you know, they asked me to do that, which was sensational. And then I recorded Whispering Jack the following year, and they were kind of hoping, you know, we might get about a couple of months of touring out, it'd be really good. And here I'm 20 years later, I got a gig with him in 4 weeks, you know, so it's like, it turned into a great thing. But around 1989, I got an offer to go to the United States to audition for a band called Nelson. And it was a really tough move for me, just because I had to leave John's band pretty much at the peak of his career, and also leave my family and everything. But it was such an amazing opportunity. I just thought, I got to take this. You know, I can't. I'd be kicking myself for the rest of my life if I didn't do it. So I did it. It was a tremendous experience, and I ended up living there pretty much for about the next 13 years, and just moved back to Australia about 2 years ago, and loved America. It was a great place. Americans were fantastic people, but no place like home, you know. So it's good to be back. But anyway, I taught at Guitar Institute of Technology over there at Musicians Institute for about 5 years or 6 years. That was an incredible experience, and got to tour the States and see a lot of things, and you know, went through all the financial scenarios of 1 minute being all right, the next minute being flat broke, and all the rest of it. But you know, all through it I was able to make a living as a musician to some degree, and experience a lot of amazing things. So the reason I'm sort of telling you this stuff is just that if you have any questions, they don't have to be about me, they can just be about being a musician in general, and feel free to chuck them on up here. So, you know, there's a pretty fair chance that no matter what you ask, I've probably experienced it. So feel free. Any questions? I talked to the guys at CMI down in Melbourne, who were the main importers of ESP guitars, and I was playing a Telecaster style guitar. Here you go, the litigation will start any minute now, but it was actually made by ESP, and I really fell in love with that guitar, and I played it for about 6 years. And then I started talking to the guys at CMI, and they said, well, would you be interested in trying out an actual ESP? And I chose the Horizon just based on my own personal taste. And I noticed it was sort of stuck up the back of the catalogue. I didn't really sort of see a lot of people playing it. And once I got it, I fallen in love with the thing. I got it about just over a year ago, and it's pretty much the only guitar you'll ever see me playing. I mean, I'm just sort of set on it. It's I haven't got any excuses now. It's such a good guitar. If I make any mistakes, I can't blame the guitar anymore. So.
What gauge are your strings?
The gauge of strings, 11 to 52. I've gone through a lot of gauges over the years. I started off really light, like on 8s and that sort of thing when I started to play, just because you know what it's like when you first start to play, it hurts your hands. And but then as I wanted to get more into playing slide, I learned to play slide on another guitar that I had, a cheap sort of copy type guitar that I tuned to an open chord. And once I'd sort of developed enough facility with it, I went back to the same guitar and just standard tuning. And so that was sort of the dilemma. I had to figure out a compromise of how I could play slide on a guitar that still has a low action. So the compromise was I thought I'd use heavier strings and keep the low action, and that seems to have worked out. Plus it's a good tone, you know, meaty. And the cool thing about playing the slide guitar in the standard tuning is that you actually end up doing it more, because as long as you've got a slide with you, you can always do it. Whereas if you're having a jam with somebody and you haven't got your slide guitar set up with you, you can't do it. I actually end up doing it on a lot of albums and things just because I can play it on whatever guitar I've got. So yeah, it's a good thing. But that's why the strings are a bit beefy, considering the way I play. So. Well, it came from going back to playing the regular guitar, and Rocky Mountain Way was actually my original inspiration for playing a slide that Joe Walsh tune. And Joe Walsh tunes his guitar to an open E chord. That's actually why I wear it on my middle finger. I just because Joe does that. And I thought, well, that's what you do. So, you know, that's the way your head works when you're about 12 years old. You know? And Joe had his guitar tuned to an open E chord. So when he laid his slide straight across the neck, the intervals that he got were... So for me to get... Because you got to get, you know... Got to have that, you know. So. But it was just a sheer coincidence because not many people use the second finger. I think Bonnie Raitt, Joe Walsh, there's a few other people, but I can't think of them right now. That's how rare it is you see people doing that. But it is the best digit to use if you want to try that sort of thing. So it was just a fluke. I actually went, if I stuck it on my fourth finger, it just wouldn't have worked, and I would have thought, can't do that. So,
very cool. But
it was, yeah, got lucky. Well, it's a good question as far as the endorsement thing goes. I've never ever had a company ask me to endorse their equipment for money, you know. And when I first got to the States, this was about 1989, so we were still pretty much in the hedonistic, excessive 80s, you know, where there was lots of people endorsing gear, and you know, I knew of top rock stars that I didn't know them, but I knew of them, and they were just getting a paycheck from the company. And which is, I don't really know whether they like the equipment they were endorsing or not, but I'm sure they like that. But I've never really experienced anything like that, and frankly I wouldn't do it. I used to have nightmares about it when I was really, really broke in the States, and I was thinking, oh man, what if a guitar company came up and said, we'll give you 30 grand a year if you endorse this guitar, and it's shaped like a big battle axe or something, you know. I thought I just couldn't have done it, you know. I'd rather just go on scraping a living out. I couldn't have done that. And my take on it is, a lot of times with endorsements, I'm already using the stuff, and then they approach me. That's what's always happened to me. Like, no one's ever walked up and said, here, try this, you know. Usually I find the gear myself and think, this is really good, I'll play this. And that's what happened with the ESP. The only reason they came up was because I was already playing this Telecaster, and I wanted to let people know it was an ESP and not a Fender. I actually was saying that out of courtesy to Fender. And then Fender contacted me and said if I didn't take the word telly off the website, they were going to sue me. So well, I suppose that's fair enough. The weird thing was, whenever I played that guitar and anyone thought it was a good guitar, they didn't go and buy an ESP, they went and bought a Fender. But then when CMI approached me, they said, well, you got this ESP telly, you want to try a real one? And I sussed one of these out, and I just thought, well, it's time to go back to this style of guitar. Like, I originally was always drawn to like a 24 fret neck, deep cutaway, you know, neck through, all these things, but I kept the telly elements of it with the reloaded strings and just a simple 2 pickup 3-way switch, you know. Just the telly is in there somewhere, but especially with the reloaded sort of deal. Well, the ESP shipped with Seymour Duncan's, but I'm a Damasio endorsee, so same deal, you know. They just found out I was using them and then rang me up. So there's a PAF, virtual PAF in the back, and a blues bucker in the front. So and the beauty of having an endorsement is, especially a pickup endorsement, is you can keep trying them until you get one you like. It's really tough when you know, understand what everyone's got to go through, because I went through it myself until I was fortunate enough to get in this situation where you've got to just sort of take a shot and listen to some sound bites on a website or just go for advice. But you never really know until you stick them in your own guitar and play them through your own amp, all the rest of it. So yeah, I never take the endorsement thing for granted at all. I'm very faithful to companies. I mean, as long as they're faithful to me, I'm for it. So. No, not at all. I mean, the simpler songs, actually, that's actually where I sort of come from as a songwriter and as a musician. I think it's more challenging to write a timeless melody that is simple, that a lot of people can relate to, rather than writing something that's in a million different time signatures that you probably only ever want to hear once. I mean, you know, a lot of the really heavy fusion and progressive stuff, I just can't take too much of it. You know, at the end of the day, I sort of like something simpler. But like, we're talking about Smoke on the Water, and you know, how much grief they get for that riff because people look at it like it's some bonehead thing, and I'm like, man, he took 4 chords. They weren't even major or minor chords. He took 4 power chords and made a riff that would last 4 decades. You know, it's like in 2 weeks I'm going to be a part of a thing down in Melbourne for a guitarathon. It's going to be the most guitar players playing Smoke on the Water for the longest time. It's going to be hysterical. I can't wait. well, that's a tough question. I mean, it'd be just basically be a huge list. I mean, Alan Holdsworth has been a massive influence on me in almost every regard. I mean, as far as just the way he approaches the instrument. And I sort of found a kindred spirit in him in the sense that when I learned to play, I taught myself how to play. So, you know, you tend to do what you want to do, and then but you're not aware of all the other options that are out there. So I always played this legato style where I'd sort of pick one note and then hammer on the next and all the rest of it, instead of being a really fast picker. When I finally saw people could actually do that, I couldn't believe it. I thought, you can do that? And at first, for a long time, I think I was about 19, and read a Frank Zappa interview where he said that if you can't pick he said, I don't pick every note, so I'm not really a good guitar player. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. I thought, I'm ashamed, I'm a disgrace to my entire family, like the whole town, because they all thought I was a pretty good guitar player, and I thought I'm a fake, I'm a fraud. And like I said, this is how a young person's mind works when you're impressionable. And but then later I read about Alan Holdsworth in an Eddie Van Halen interview and managed to get one of his albums, and I thought, I heard that sound, it was the same sound, and I realised that he was someone I could actually, it made me realise there were no rules. You just do what you want, just try anything. But there's a lot of people like Scott Henderson, Tribal Tech, but then AC/DC. I mean, it could be anyone. The Police, I don't know, Stravinsky, Zappa. Who knows? I love all kinds of music. I love country, bluegrass, jazz, metal, death metal, punk. I don't care. As long as it's well done and whoever's doing it's got their heart and soul into it, then I'm it's the emotion that gets you, It's like, it's got to be that. Well, I don't personally have any classical influences in that strict sense, but because I was such a huge Ritchie Blackmore fan, it was the reason I actually wanted to play the guitar, was because I heard Speed King, and I thought Ritchie's the man. So then the long quest came for the Strat and the Marshall, I read that Ritchie took classical lessons, and I thought, well, you've got to do that. That's what you do. So when I was about 17, I think, I did about a year of classical lessons with a really good teacher in Bendigo and down in Victoria. And it was actually great because he taught me how to read music, and I, without even realising, I actually became a pretty good sight reader. And then, of course, went back to rock and roll and didn't read a chart for about 3 years, and pulled them out 3 years later and was like, every good boy. Shocking, but it introduced me to some of the most beautiful music. I mean, I think it's the most incredible stuff. I still can't believe that people can physically play that stuff. It's so incredibly demanding. And I think I realised that to really do it justice, I'd have to devote more time to it than I was willing to give it, because I was just so into this Strat and Marshall thing. It's like power chords got me. I couldn't get away from it. So. Yeah. I don't do much sweep picking. It's really mainly hybrid picking, they call it. So it's picking fingers. A bit up to see, I suppose, from all the way up here. But it was interesting. That was. I've always been doing this actually ever since I was very young, but I wasn't really exploiting it as much as I do now. In about when was it? 88, I think, or 89. I think I saw one of these instructional videos in a shop and at Soundworks actually, and it was Vinnie Moore, and he did this big sweep arpeggio, and I was blown out. Phil Buckle was working in the shop at the time. I don't know if you guys might remember him from Southern Sons. And I said, crikey, what was that? And he said, oh, it was a sweep arpeggio. I said, man, I've never seen anything like that before. And he said, well, you should take this home and have a look at it. And it was Frank Gambale's first video. And I took that home and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me, So, I mean, it was like a circus came to town. But the amazing thing was, the way Frank was doing it, I could relate to, because it was smaller groupings of arpeggios, and I thought, hang on a minute, So I go over to shop with the fingers, and I could actually do it. It was the most amazing thing. It's like someone sort of hit me on the head with a wand and said, now you can do this, I had the physical ability, I just didn't know what to do with the left hand with it, and Frank led the way, so it was sensational. Then the funny thing was, it wasn't long after that I did an album called Centrifugal Funk, where I got to play with Frank and Sean Lane. So it was just weird. I got to meet him and everything. It's beautiful. Oh, geez, you got an hour? Most embarrassing moment. Oh my God. Oh, there's just so many. I mean, once you start sort of doing this a lot, like for a living, you realise that all those embarrassing things that usually happen in private or amongst friends actually happen to you in front of thousands of people. So there was a good one once, never revealed this, but when we did the orchestra tour years ago, back in '88, I was supposed to do this sort of tapping type solo before the song called We Know Angels. And I had this prototype Yamaha guitar that I was doing it on, and it had this weird jack plug on it, where if you weren't really careful, it didn't go all the way in. And I remember, it's just in front of thousands of bloody people, symphony orchestra, the whole deal, and John says, and now something really special. And I'm like, nothing. Check that, nothing. And he's like, and maybe not. And then oh, okay, and now this. But typical John though, he's great like that. Like if something happens like that, he'll just make a gag out of it. He won't take you at the back after the show and haul you over the coals or anything. He's brilliant. But that's the trade-off is you've got to be, now you are part of the show officially. So you're part of the routine. Well, it's an interesting point, like a young person playing a guitar, because we were just talking about this today in one of the lessons I was doing, where depending on your physical build, like the guitar can actually be a really difficult instrument. Like for a younger person, like obviously your son is going to get a lot taller and his hands are going to probably get bigger and all the rest of it. Like I have really small hands and a terrible stretch, so that's why I feel confident doing these instructional things, because I figure if I can do it, anyone can. I mean, it's not like the Holdsworth thing where he's got hands like the, the little Steve Vai thing with the bloody big ass fingers, But I would basically say the main factor would probably be weight for a younger person. Like a Les Paul style guitar, there's a lot of weight in those things, And I just think that could end up hurting his back or something like that. So I would probably consider just starting off with a lighter instrument. But as far as the scale length of it all goes, they're all pretty much the same, I think. I don't think there's really a smaller scale guitar out there, but the weight factor might be something to consider. Les Paul's, those style of guitars look cool, but they are really heavy. So if he's trying to stand up and do the deed with one of them, it might be kind of hard on his back or something. Oh, I've had quite a few guitars over the years, yeah, and I've managed to keep the precious ones, and unfortunately a few of the precious ones I've just had to go because the rent was due, But I'm not really a collector in the sense that I try to keep guitars that have a unique quality to them so that they'll come in handy for recording and stuff like that. But I'm not, I don't have 10 Strats at home, or even if ESP said, you can have 10 of these, I'd be like, well, I don't need the one. So it's like, I'd probably take another one as a spare. But I mean, I love that one guitar thing. I used to love Angus Young. He's always got the SG. There it is. Blackmore's got his Strat. Jimmy Page usually had the Paul. It's like I really like that. Well, I sort of got sick of just keeping them in tune over the years, and if you broke a string, you needed a toolkit to change it, and then that if you had it floating, you couldn't finish the tune, and just I don't know, just after I sort of got into that Telecaster thing, when it came time to choose this guitar and what it was going to be made up of, I just thought I think I'll go with the reloaded string thing. I think it really helps the sustain and the sound of the instrument. So I thought, But mind you, whenever someone gives me a guitar with a Floyd on it, I'm like a kid in a candy store again, It's shocking, it all comes out. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy if I could actually improvise the whole song, frankly. It's like my memory wouldn't be capable of memorising an entire solo, so... But that's a skill all in itself, It's like they're two discrete skills, aren't they? Like the intense memorisation of a complex piece as opposed to just winging it and trying to come up with something on the spot that sounds like it was composed. I would hope, That's how I'm sort of trying to approach it now. So I'm trying to get the improvisation more honed to where it makes sense in a compositional sense as opposed to just a collection of my favourite licks sort of thing. I really think it's got a lot more to do with the people and the musicians. I mean, a friend of mine bought a bunch of DVDs the other day. One was a sort of a bootleg thing, and it was AC/DC from about 1978, I think. And they were on this English show called Rock Goes to College, and they'd just come back from the States. They were just about to break, and the place was about as big as this. It looked, and the stage was about as big as this, and it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there was not one passenger in that band. They hit the stage like It was absolute unified effort. We're going to dominate the world. That's it, and it worked. You know, so you know there wasn't, you know, the bass player wasn't standing there getting into his bass tone, you know, and sort of looking at chicks or whatever. It was like, it was, you know, when there was a blank spot on the stage, someone filled it. It was absolutely down to the money. It was one of the most unbelievable live shows I've ever seen from anyone, let alone from them. And because you know I love everything they do anyway, but it was, I mean, it was almost a lesson in that. Like what are you trying to do? Are you in it for yourself, or you're in it for the band? Like four average musicians working together can dominate the world. They can actually do whatever they want. Four great players that can't stand each other and won't interact together at all is just doomed, you know. I mean, they're all thinking about their solo careers while they're trying to play together. It's just, it's over before it started. And it's, you know, one thing that might help is like give the guitar player the bass and say, there you go, try this. And number one, they'll find out how hard it is, because it's about absolute consistency over a long period of time. And then, of course, they'll realise how powerful the bass player is in any band, and they'll turn your major blues into a minor blues in a heartbeat. You know, it's like, you know, well, you let them have a go at the drums. I mean, it's just that compositional process too of like trying to encourage everybody to contribute to the writing, and trying to get across that everyone's in it together. It's not like, well, if you wrote 4 choruses and I only wrote 1, I get 4 times as much money as you, or something stupid like that. You know, it's got to be one in all in, otherwise it just ain't going to work. You know? Any physio or anything like that? No, actually, that's a good question. And yeah, I must say that, you know, touch wood, I've never encountered any problems, no hand pain or anything like that. Absolutely nothing lasting. I mean, every now and then there might be some sort of weird little tweak, but you know, it goes away in about a day. And I think it's just mainly from me doing what I naturally want to do, and not really trying to do something just for the sake of doing it. Like, I always question the musical value of anything I'm trying to learn or trying to get under my hands, and you know, I wonder whether it's worth spending a lot of time on it. Hello? No, I never even owned a metronome. But the funny thing was, the only thing I had to practice along to when I wasn't actually learning with the band, we actually were out doing gigs by the time I was 13. We didn't muck around, so that's what I mean. But people forgave us because we were just kids, so we were allowed to sound terrible and play in a pub. It was great, you know, they loved us. But what I would do was just constantly play along to albums. So in a sense, you're actually jamming with the best musicians in the world. You know, I'd be playing along. This went on for years. I mean, and I'd put on my favourite records, and I would just be trying to play along to them by ear. And you know, one minute I'd try and work out all the parts and try to double that, and then if a solo turned up, I'd just improvise over the top of the other solo. And that was like my metronome, only much more musical, you know, because you got to learn accents and all the rest of it, and plus it was a great way to absorb the influence of your favourite players by just listening to them rather than actually copying them. So, you know, I could come up with my own thing at the same time. Well, it varies, you know. I can sincerely say I don't practice enough, that's for sure. I don't think you possibly can. Some people do, but I don't. But it's just one of those things where once you start earning a living as a muso, you know, you do spend all day with a guitar in your hands, but you mightn't necessarily be doing anything particularly demanding. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to be able to earn a living playing the guitar. Don't get me wrong, but it's a different energy to practicing. So like we do the Dancing with the Stars show. We're in that house band for that, and like that basically from 11 o'clock in the morning till about 10 at night till I get home. That's where I am doing that, and so, you know, by the time I get home, I mean, I'm not really I'm pretty burnt, you know. I don't really play anymore after I get home. Plus my wife she'd like to get to know the guy she hadn't seen all day. So. Oh, it's an amazing thing, and if you're in a situation where someone is hounding you to get better at your reading, I say revel in it and go for it, because you'll never regret it. You know, I mean, it's the most, well, it's, you know, it's the most amazing thing to have, like for work possibilities, for learning, for memory. You don't have to memorise everything. My reading, oh well, it's pretty lousy, but I mean, well, I'd have to try and read it, but I can sort of struggle through a chord chart and a few dots, you know, but I've got to work with it for a while. I mean, so basically it's not good enough to even really talk about, but that's why I'm saying it, and that's why I said it to all the students I've ever had, you know, because a lot of them sort of are looking for the out, you know, and they're thinking, this guy will help me out, you know. If you think about reading, you're probably, this guy can't read, he'll tell me it's no good, you know. But no, it's like when I was living in the States, if I'd been a good sight reader, a lot of work opportunities were there. I just couldn't do them because I couldn't read good enough. So yeah, if you're in a situation where you're in a school and someone's hassling you about reading and you're resisting, don't resist. Just go with it. You'll thank them. You'll thank that man for it later on. Oh no, well, good question. I don't have any children, and that sort of is was part of my decision as to the lifestyle I'd chosen. And I don't know how people in the military do it. Like, it must be really hard, like, to have family and be gone for 6 months or whatever, because it's essentially like being on the road. And yeah, it's tough. You can do it, but yeah, it's just, I guess it's just up to the integrity of the relationship. Like, are you can you stand it? Well, actually, I mean, when I first came back to do John's tour, my wife and I were away I was away for 2 months, and I think I did that twice. And she hung in there, and we're all right. But I said, man, if we can make it through this, we'll make it through anything. So, but yeah, it's an interesting lifestyle, the musical thing. That's what I was saying about the reading thing. If you can get that together, it'll fill in a lot of blanks that you might otherwise find in between gigs. Like, because it just increases your opportunity for gigs. You can work more, and it's just it's just one of those things where it's like you 1 minute you're up, next minute you're down, or you might not really know what's coming up next month. I'm lucky that my calendar does keep filling up, but it was a long time when it was really, really empty. With songwriting, I try a whole bunch of different techniques. I'll sit down with an acoustic and try and write a piece that is composed from low to go, and then I'll try just improvising and jamming stuff together and try chopping it up in the computer and moving it around, just anything to get a fresh idea.
Right. So there's nothing that works particularly well for you. It's just trial and error.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't have a formula.
Yep.
So.